Now we are on to the most important phase of the API consumption process, that is integration. Integration is the end goal. Integration is the goal where integration is the part where the API user will use your API, that is write real application code to call your API from their application, and they're going to deploy this in production. And once they become dependent on you, I'm pretty sure they'll stay dependent on you and keep using you for a long time to come. This is also the hardest phase for the API user because they have to write developer code in their application. That code has to be tested. That code has to be production ready. That code has to work without making the application explode. And since this is a very expensive phase for the API consumer, it will also require the most investment from your side, because what you're gonna do is you're gonna work hard to make sure that the integration phase will cost less for the user, because if you put effort here, you can kind of amortize the cost that API users have to pay. And to do that, I'm going to show what things are necessary, what parts of API portal you have to improve, and what uh, things need to accompany your API portal to make this phase a success for your API journey. Again, we are going to keep this engaging. So we are going to look at an API documentation site. This API documentation site helps the user create meetings. That's not the important bit. What I want you to focus on is whether this API portal provides the tools necessary for integrating this API in your production application. Remember, this is a critical point, that you need to evaluate whether this API provides the bits and pieces necessary to use this API in a production application. And we are beyond just running an example code. We want the user to integrate into their app. So let's take a quick look at the video that I've made. So in this video, what I'm doing is I'm going to quickly find the endpoint that I want to use to create meetings. I already know what endpoint I'm going to use. When I navigate to it, I see a couple of parameters. I know that this API reference is going to be there later. I just want to run this endpoint very quickly. I want to integrate it into my application. So to do that, what I want to do is copy a code sample. I'm not writing a curl application, so I'll switch to the language that I do write code in, that is Java. Hmm. So that doesn't look right. I don't write production application code like this. This code seems a bit fishy. So I changed to another language to see if I can get some production ready code. And so this doesn't look right either. There's definitely going something going wrong here. So let's take a closer look at the code sample. Let's see what went wrong here. So this is the Java code sample. You don't need to know Java. I'm going to make it very easy. I'm going to break down why this code sample is not something that you would put in a production application. So this code sample, to start with, it kind of advocates that you should create an HTTP client whenever you are calling this API. So I know that I'm going to be calling more than one endpoint because this API requires me to create meetings, and then I have to do a lot of other stuff as well. So if I'm creating a HTTP client every time, that's definitely not how I write Java code. I also noticed that there's a lot of repetition in this code. Probably every endpoint is a JSON request, and every endpoint requires API key. So why does this code repeat all of that information? I will want to refactor this out before this makes into production. So, and then while I'm looking at it, I notice another fishy thing, and this one is a security vulnerability. This code seems to suggest that you should put your API key inside your code. I know this is bad because the best practice says that you should be putting your API keys in the environment, and you should be reading it from the environment variable. This is a common case for for security mishaps that developers accidentally push API keys into Git repositories and they get published publicly, and then some scraper will basically use that API key to attack your application. And to top it off, I see another problem that this code sample seems to suggest that I should be building the JSON request by using by hand, that is as a string. I don't write application code like this. Usually what I would do is that I would use classes, that is models, to represent the data I want to send. And then I would use a JSON serializer to serialize that data. So this code sample does not pass the smell test for me. I would not want this to make it into my production application code. So I check other code samples and I see similar issues in Node.js. Then I check Go language as well. This Go language code sample will eventually crash your application because they're using the default HTTP client, and the default HTTP client in Go language does not come with a timeout setup. So one bad network error will basically crash your application. This is not good at all. And then I see a similar issue in C Sharp, where they're creating the HTTP client every time an API call is made. And I know that API clients tend to keep the connections open. So if you make too many API calls, you're going to eventually run out of API. Uh, you're going to eventually run out of ports, and ports exhaustion will basically uh, crash your application if it is not handled properly. And if it is handled properly, you will actually see that the best scenario is still that your application will see degraded performance, and that is not good, right? And this is the last one. This is a PHP code sample. This needs really a lot of work. It needs to be heavily refactored. And usually I would not recommend a programmer to use curl calls directly. They should use a wrapper library like Guzzle or Unirest when they're calling the API, because the calls are really short if you use them. So while we are advocating for code samples as the driving force of integration, it seems like this API portal got a lot of them wrong. So why are these code samples not good? Because they're not copy ready. Usually, when someone is coming to your API portal, they intend to integrate it, use the API in their application. So you want to give them something that they can copy into their application's code. And these code samples, as you saw, often would crash your API crash the user's application. So that is not good. And again, you see that there are bad practices sprinkled throughout the code samples. They do not follow language semantics, and making them follow language semantics will require extra work from the user who is writing the application code. And to top it off that, if you have to make calls to multiple endpoints in your application code, you will need to refactor all of these code samples, make them more modular. You will have to probably write a wrapping library around these examples. This integration is going to take forever with the kind of issues that I'm looking at. And to make it worse, there are some cases where you can make the production application crash. So what does this API do? It makes the applications crash. That's not good at all. This is insane. So if you do code samples right, they should lower this integration time significantly. And this is critical for the integrate phase, because if you do not get this right, although you have kept the user engaged through the discover and explore phase, you're going to lose them and you're going to convert and go to another API that is a competitor API to accomplish this task that they wanted to accomplish. And this API portal actually increased the integration time significantly. So what does a sane API integration need? The clue is in the previous slide, where I was talking about how you would want to refactor and clean up and make those API calls into a reusable library. That reusable library is called an SDK, or usually sometimes folks call them client libraries. I've taken a survey of some of the API portals that are loved in the community. They are beloved by us as well because they do a really good job both as a product and as and in terms of their API documentation, it converts really well, and we really love them as users of these APIs as well. So I see that Stripe prominently features SDKs, that is client libraries, in their API reference. This kind of seem to advocate that you should be calling their API using these SDKs. This is something new. And then I see that even Square is advocating that users should be calling their API using one of these SDKs. They even go as far as to make sure that all the code samples are using these client libraries. Their code samples use these libraries to write to show how to call the endpoint. So they're really really neat, and they do exactly what is needed to call the API and nothing more. And then I see the similar pattern repeat in Twilio, and I see that in DocuSign as well. So this pattern is very well established that if you want your integrate phase to go well, you have to provide SDKs, because if you have great SDKs, you have great code samples and you have API integration phase go successful. Woohoo! So this is awesome. We know that the secret to this phase is to write SDKs, but writing SDKs can take a lot of work. What you can do is that you can use API Matic to automatically generate SDKs. There are other SDK generators as well out there, but API Matic's SDK is battle tested. It has been maintained for over 6 years, and it is used to make roughly hundreds of millions of API calls every year. Here's an example code that I saw in in an API portal, and you can see that if a code sample uses an SDK, the code sample is automatically very neat. This code sample pretty much reads like poetry. It defines an API request, and then that API request is quickly executed. It does not repeat any of the things that we saw in the previous examples that were being repeated, and there were a lot of mistakes there as well. This code sample is following the best practices, and this is something that I would want my team to use when they're writing an API integration against this API, because I know that it will work, and I know that it will keep my application stable, robust in the in when we deploy it to production. There are not going to be surprises here, right? Because it's a well-tested SDK, and it's going to be. I know that it is used by a lot of people in the community, so the issues are closed. It is well maintained, and it is well taken care of. The integrate phase is quite critical, like I mentioned, because writing production API integration is really hard. So if you invest here, you are basically saving hundreds of developer time, and that is developer time for all of your API consumers. Don't forget that using your API is just one of the steps that a API consumer goes through when they're using your API, because they're going to be also writing an application. They have goals and deadlines to meet. They have other projects to work on. Maybe in the next month or so, they have about 60 tasks in their backlog, and they have a lot of stress at home as well, maybe. And then what do they get stuck with? They get stuck with integrating an API. But if you write neat and clean SDKs and you make integration easy, they're going to be sending their wishes and prayers to you, I'm sure. Just before we finish, I want to share a bonus point with you. That is the last trick, the secret behind API adoption, how to perfect it in your API portal. And the secret revealed is that the best API docs are SDK first. And that's right. In the examples that I've shown you, all of them basically suggest to the user that they should select an SDK first before they can deep dive into the documentation. And all of those documentations are written so that if a user has selected an SDK, they can quickly get their code samples in a language that they have selected. They do not have to learn the whole REST API specification. That is, they do not have to dig into all the REST API details of this API. They will just basically install this SDK in their application, quickly copy the code sample, and they will be able to start running in less than 10 minutes, which is what my goal was with this integration phase. And you can see that all of the good API portals, the portals that I like, that I've shown in this webinar, are using SDKs, and they make it so that all of their documentation is SDK first, and it is very well integrated into the backbone of their API portal. That is, these SDKs are very well integrated. It is woven through all their getting started guides, through their setting up guides, through their first API call guide, and through the entire API reference as well. To summarize, if you want to get the integrate phase right, it is a really hard phase for the developer. So you would want to invest in this phase a lot. And that means writing SDKs to make integrations go as quickly as possible. And you would want to rework your API docs so that they're SDK first, because users have just one goal, making sure that your API works in their they have just one goal, that they want to call your API in their application as quickly as possible. And the quickest way to do that is that they just copy a few bits of Java or maybe JavaScript or PHP code into their application and they're running in a few minutes, right? So and this is a success. It seems like we have gone through all three phases: discover, explore, and integrate. And if you have been following what I've shown as examples and counter examples, your API portal should be now number one.